This is the J. Scott Outdoors podcast on Western big game hunting and fishing, brought to you by GoHunt.com Insider. Research faster, hunt more. Go to GoHunt.com/insider and use the J. Scott promo code when signing up to receive a $50 KUIU gift card. I'm your host, J. Scott, and I live and breathe hunting and fishing, spending half the year in the field experiencing God's creation. I hope you'll enjoy hearing about our adventures. Guys, welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Today we're going to have a great episode with Cliff Gray of Flat Tops Wilderness Guides out of Colorado. And Cliff is able to shed a real unique perspective on outfitting in Colorado and some of the great mule deer and elk hunts that he provides. But before we get into that, I want to remind you that Colorado application, the deadline is April 5th. And interesting, with Colorado, you have to put all the money up front. So you have to float the money up front. You have to do everything. Elk and deer you can do online, but the sheep you have to do with paper applications. So make sure that your deadline, that you know about the deadline April 5th, and make sure you get all your applications in. We've also got Nevada is coming up here in April, and we've got some other deadlines as well. Montana was just March 15th. Idaho is coming up here in April, at the end of April. So we're going to do an episode on Colorado, breaking down all the units. But in this particular episode with Cliff Gray, we're going to be talking mainly about the flat tops and specifically about Unit 25, in which Cliff is in. And I want to remind you that the 23rd of March, which is just a few days from when this episode will air, New Mexico big game regulations are due. So hopefully you've been able to listen to some of these podcasts with Adam Bronson and with Tom McReynolds to help in your decision of what units to apply for. I want to also bring to light GoHunt.com Insider is doing a fantastic job with their or their state strategies, the application strategies. And I'm starting to look at the 2016 Colorado deer strategies, and they break down both the mule deer and the whitetail deer, as well as the elk and some of the other animals. And there's some really cool charts and graphs, and it walks through some of the resident and non-resident draw odds. And it's pretty interesting to be able to go through this and see how many applicants last year put in for the same exact tag that I'm looking at putting in for this year. And so I want to encourage you guys to check out your GoHunt.com Insider draw odds. And if you're not already a member, highly recommend checking into that and signing up. If you do use the J. Scott promo code, obviously you'll get a $50 KUIU gift card. One thing that I thought was interesting here on the current mule deer herd condition on one of the charts here is that in 2005 and 2006, it looks like there was a high of mule deer, 613,450 in 05 and 612,760 in 06. And then, of course, they had the big winter kill there in 07. And, the deer herd numbers statewide now, well, in 13, they were at 390,660. And 2014 numbers, they had come up a little bit to 424,000. But interestingly, almost 200,000 deer, say 190,000 deer off the highs of 05, 06. So very interesting. Also something to remember that I'm sure we're going to go over a lot when we cover all the different units on Colorado elk and deer is that the deer seasons actually are about as late as they possibly get. So you're going to get third season deer that is usually when the fourth season is. The dates are November 5th to the 13th in 2016, and the fourth season rifle deer is November 16th through the 20th. So just keep that in mind when applying. You may ask, what does that mean? Well, that means the deer are going to be definitely pushing does and rutting on that November 16th to the 20th season, that fourth season. But dang sure on that third season too, especially towards the last 4 or 5 days of the hunt, should be fantastic. So it's going to be interesting to see if everybody tries to cash in their points and what kind of point creep we have. But I'm looking forward to a great episode with Cliff Gray. I want to thank you guys, the listeners, for tuning in to the podcast, and I just get so much. It's so humbling to get all the emails that I get with you guys telling me how much you love the podcast and how much value you find in it. I do need a little bit of help from you guys. On my iTunes, if you're listening on iTunes, please go on there and give us a favorable review. We don't give prizes, and door prize number one for this review and that review, but I would trust that if you guys find value in this podcast, that you would go on there and give favorable reviews and 5-star ratings. I don't really believe in buying my ratings, and I think by doing giveaways and prize packages, I just think that that's for others that use they look at the ratings. If I'm paying you guys, you're going to give me great ratings. So whatever the ratings are, I'd encourage you to go on there and give us good ratings, and I appreciate that. You can email me at jscottoutdoors@gmail.com if you have any questions, if you have any comments, or if you have any suggestions for this podcast. And a lot of these podcasts that I've done, and a lot of them that are in the queue, are directly from things that you guys want to specifically see and hear. So let's see. Don't forget the late rifle seasons in Colorado. That's going to be awesome. And don't forget to follow on Instagram at jscottoutdoors, my associate Dar Colburn at Dar Colburn, Facebook J Scott Outdoors, YouTube channel J Scott Outdoors, and of course our website J Scott Outdoors. Also, you can check out the latest blog posts on jscottoutdoors.com. Dar and I are actually at Colburn and Scott Outfitters. We have a bunch of ranches that we have leased for Mexico for Coues deer, and we have both fully outfitted hunts and do-it-yourself hunts. So if you go on jscottoutdoors.com, you'll be able to see some of the country of some of the ranches, and there's going to be many more posts here to come on that. But if you have any questions, you want to know about those do-it-yourself Coues deer hunts, send me an email, jscottoutdoors@gmail.com. Guys, thanks for all your attention to this podcast and your support. Let's get right to the episode. Welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Today we have Cliff Gray from Flat Tops Wilderness Guides. And Cliff lives not too far from where I spend the summers. Cliff, you can probably explain it better, but it's going to be kind of between Gypsum and Glenwood Springs, correct? Colorado.
Yeah, that's pretty much, where it is. And, most of the best way to describe it to guys who've hunted Colorado is I'm pretty much in the dead center of Unit 25.
Unit 25. So that's going to be, I assume, the border's going to be I-70 on the south, and then it's going to run to the north and take in a big chunk of the Flat Tops Wilderness?
Yeah, so the 25 is the northeast unit for the Flat Tops.
Gotcha.
Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, the southeast.
Southeast, okay.
Yep.
And your house where you actually live is not far off the Colorado River where the confluence of the Eagle and the Colorado meet, correct?
Yeah, exactly. It's about 20 or 30 minutes from there. Mostly on a dirt road and all that stuff. But yeah, we're kind of right in that area, right before you slide down into the Glenwood Canyon.
Gotcha. And you live at about 8,000 feet, or maybe 9,000. How high do you live?
Yeah, so our place, and that's where I do all my packing and outfitting out of. It essentially borders the wilderness area, and we live there year round. It's right at 8,000 feet, and it's not too bad. We have power and stuff out there, but it's a trek, as you can imagine. But yeah, and essentially it's right in I would call it the end of the winter range for the Flat Tops. It's at the elevation that goes from there into the wilderness, so it's in that 8,000 area.
How often in the winter do you get completely snowed in where your road is impassable?
It would happen. I have a D5 Caterpillar as my snow plow, so I never totally get snowed in, Jay. But you have to have something like that for living in that kind of an area. If I didn't have that, I mean, it could surely happen. It'd probably happen a couple times a year. And luckily, I do have, a big portion of that actually gets maintained. Not all the way to my house, but a big portion of it, because there's, Colorado, a lot of those. That area when I was a kid was different. A lot of that was cattle ranching families and that sort of thing. But a lot of it has changed to second homes and kind of recreational ranches. So there's quite a bit of maintenance up there. It's really not, you're remote. And my wife would tell you that we're crazy. That's just the reality. But it's not as bad as it sounds, And I like it. It's, because of the hunting business and the seasonality of it, and then you add on the summer stuff we do too, it gets busy during that time of year. So it's kind of peaceful up there in the winter, and it's not, it's got its challenges, but it's not bad.
For sure. Cliff, why don't you give me a little bio on yourself and how you came to be the owner and operator of Flat Tops Wilderness Guides?
Yeah, so I grew up part of my childhood in Unit 44 over there on Adams Rib Ranch, and my dad was an outfitter there. And so I was exposed to it from a pretty early age, and then I actually spent the latter half of my childhood where I'm at here, actually visiting right now in Northern California. And I always, hunting had always been a big part of my life, with my dad doing that. And then I kind of I was lucky in the sense that I was also exposed to the livestock part of the business. My family had big grazing permits on that side of the forest in Colorado, so I was also exposed to the packing and the horses and mules and all that. And that's a big part of what we do now. So I kind of I was lucky in the sense I was exposed to that throughout my childhood. So I had interest in hunting, but I was also capable on the livestock end. So I knew, as I went and did kind of for 5 or 6 years, I did some other things with my life. I kind of knew that I wanted to get back into it. So 3 years ago, I bought a large permit, where I'm at now, and then with some partners, I bought the ranch that I operated out of. And I bought it because it has a long history, and it has always been run, pretty well, and it had a a lot of people who've hunted the Flat Tops are familiar with that outfit. And so I knew it was a good asset, but it needed like some business marketing and that sort of thing to get it back going. So it was a good opportunity. The guy I bought it from was a great guy, but he really wasn't interested in building the business. So I bought it 3 years ago and just kind of, started that progression to build the marketing back up, get hunters up there, improve the gear, improve the stock. and all that sort of thing. And then also kind of explore some other options on the hunting front that were a little bit out of the standard wilderness hunting. So I've been able to do that. When I bought it, they were doing probably, a dozen hunts a year. Now I'm doing roughly 70 elk hunt, focused elk hunts a year. And then I'm doing probably 10 to 15 mule deer hunts, kind of depending on what I have in terms of people who draw those tags. So it keeps me busy, and that's kind of the background on the current operation. It's been fun, we could get into a long conversation about outfitting and in that world. We already talked a little bit offline about it, but it's it's an interesting deal. You got to love it because it's tremendously hard work. But I meet a bunch of great people. I get to enjoy a couple of my passions, so I have no complaints.
Would you consider yourself a rancher, an outfitter, a cowboy, a wrangler? I mean, what do you tell people that, what are you?
Yeah, so I'm surely not a rancher because I'm not in the cattle business at all. So what I would say is that I have the background in the packing and all, the horse and mule packing. And for this type of outfitting, you have to have that knowledge. But in the end, I for sure, my primary occupation is an outfitter. It just happens to be that's just a part of this type of outfitting. And that's what you'll see, a lot of the wilderness elk hunts in particular, you've kind of got two types of outfitters out there. You've got guys who really are cowboys for the most part, and they would tell you that. That's what they enjoy doing. Packing and getting people into the wilderness where they can enjoy hunting. And then you got guys that are more hunters/guides, and really they're probably only doing a few hunts. They may be focused on different species than elk. They may be doing a couple selective goat hunts or sheep hunts and that sort of thing. And those guys are more hunters/guides. I would say, like, in that spectrum, I'm probably 3/4 of the way to the hunter/guide, but packing is just a part of our thing, so that's an important element of it. Does that kind of answer your question? A little long-winded explanation, but
yeah, no. So when you were a kid and your dad was an outfitter there in Unit 44, was the mule deer hunting as good as it is now or better? And
yeah,
that's the first question. Yeah.
Yeah, and since then I've hunted that area quite a bit on my own, backpack hunting and that sort of thing. When I was a kid, there's absolutely way more deer, and there's a lot of reasons for that. That winter range there has changed a lot. You've got quite a bit of development in eagle, particularly in some of the really sensitive parts of the winter range. That bottom valley has been developed, so I think that's hurt the deer numbers substantially. I mean, you still have genetics for huge deer there. When I was a kid, the whole way it was managed was a lot differently. You could get tags there. I believe they were over the counter. And, it was a different world, like just kind of like an anecdote. I have a set of, I have like a skull plate off a deer my dad shot in my house there in Colorado. And it's probably like a 215 typical. And when he shot it, he cut the skull plate off and threw it on the top of the barn, and it's bleached. You know what I mean? It wasn't uncommon for those deer to be pretty readily available. And now it's not that they're not there, it's just lower numbers. You know what I'm saying, Jay?
Gotcha. Yeah, and so how old were you when you were like, your dad would tell you, ride up there and go pick up so-and-so and take this group there and, spend the night on your own. And, did you just grow up ever since you can remember off on your own, picking up people?
Yeah, the livestock thing, a lot of that then was cattle oriented, and to be honest, I was, I moved from there when I was really independent and being able to pack and stuff independently. I wasn't old enough to do that. So I was exposed to it. I continue to be exposed to it actually here in California. But, my brothers did a lot of that stuff. I mean, those guys, it's kind of and a lot of that's changed, but, my brothers would, go from 44, go all the way over to Rudai. That's like a 15-mile horseback ride, and go get cows or do whatever and bring them back into Adams Rib. So it's kind of a different world. I didn't get that exposed to it at that point in my life because I was young.
Gotcha. And then you guys moved to California, and were ranching there. So you kind of were a little young to be, just out on a horse wherever for however many days on your own.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've been on a horse since I was pretty much an embryo. I mean, my mom and dad were always on stock, and I've seen a lot of. I kind of cringe at it actually because there's pictures of my mom with me or one of my brothers, in one of those little backpacks on a horse. At this, people might go crazy if you did that now with a kid, but that was just kind of part of our existence. So I was, the horse and mule thing. It's kind of interesting because they're a pain in the butt. If anybody's hunted with them. And you've been exposed to them, they're a real pain in the butt. Even if you know what you're doing, but if you have you have the experience with them, it helps a lot because you kind of know how to deal with them. And I was lucky to not only be exposed to that in Colorado, but my family's always had horses and stuff. I mean, we always, even once we moved from there, I mean, our tack rooms always had a bunch of pack saddles in them, and my dad was always into that. So I was lucky in that regard just because I was constantly exposed to it.
How many head of stock do you own right now?
So right now I've got 26 mules and about 15 riding horses. And then when I'm at full capacity in a hunting season, I operate with about 30, roughly 30 pack animals and about 20 riding animals. And most of my pack animals are mules. I got a little bit of a mix. I'm packing and riding some of the horses. So basically 50 when I'm operating.
50 when you're operating. Every single outfitter and horseman, packer, whatever you want to call yourself, every single one of you has got the one mule it's about enough to make you pull your hair out, but they're so good that you're not going to let them go. What's the name of your one mule that tests you on a daily basis?
I've got I've got a bunch of those big mules that are like draft. They're the horse component of them's a draft. And I got one named Julie, and she's awesome. She's great, but it's that exact dynamic you're talking about. If you turn her out, if you turn her out up when you're 15 miles in the wilderness, she's going to go home, and she's not going to do it when she's not going to do it when you're looking hard to catch and stuff like that. But yeah, you can get into a huge debate on the horse and mule thing, and if you think hunters and outfitters have opinions on everything, you should talk to packers. You know what I mean? It's like a night. You can go down 100 different rabbit holes on them, but I use the mules, primarily because my dad used them when I was a kid. We had them, so I'm familiar with them. Everyone's got a different personality though. It sounds like you've probably just like by that question I can tell that you've been around them a little bit.
My uncles and cousins owned some pack stations in the Sequoia National Park, and I used to listen to their stories about odds and ends and different horses and different mules and the same type of thing. They always had a couple that they didn't want to just take out in the middle of the woods and just shoot, but they wanted to at times. But they were extremely handy animals, but there's always some that were always testing their patience for sure.
Oh yeah, you have that all. As a matter of fact, I had my dad out. He helped me on a couple of summer trips last year, and he was just chewing my ear out about one that he threw. The thing about it, some of them you can put hobbles on them and you can watch them run away because they've got the hobbles figured out. So he was up in the very top of the flat tops at probably 11.5. Chasing around a big black mule. So that's just that's just the nature of it. And, as outfitters, we deal with that constantly. But over time, at least you deal with 90% of those problems just with kind of experience. You start to learn your animals and all that. And then the other advantage, really, Jay, is when you have 50 of them, when you're operating and you're using them every day, you start to get into a system, and a lot of the craziness stops. You know what I mean? Because you got a system you put them in.
Well, and they get into a rhythm too, don't they?
Oh yeah, like they know where they're going. They're not scared by things and all that. All those things. And just pack an elk. Like we're gonna pack out, something like 40 bulls a year on them, let's say, right? Well, if you got, that's a big challenge for a pack animal to get used to. But at least in that system, they're going to get exposed to it relatively quickly, and then it's one less thing you got to worry about. Then when you go into packing a bull, that mule is going to have no problem. He's just going to stand there, going to be able to stick it on and be able to get out of there. So it's there's a lot of advantages to kind of a system around them.
So I'm sure you've been trying to pack elk out and what have you, and you've had some train wrecks. Is there any specific train wrecks you can tell me about? I love all these stories where you get the train wreck stories. So what do you got? Yeah,
every year you have a few. You try to avoid them. When you're packing antlers, that's when you're going to have your bigger ones. But I'll tell you, the thing is some of the bigger ones happen when not even when you have elk on them and you're packing, say you've got 4 mules and you got 2 bulls on the 4 mules, it looks like it's going to be problematic. But my biggest wrecks have actually been just when I'm riding and just something odd happens. Like I actually have a meniscus issue now because I had a horse roll on me in the snow, and that's probably the one that sticks most in my head recently. My cook was behind me, and I was bringing him out of a camp early, and I think it was third season. We probably had like 2 feet of snow, and we came down a steep area, and the cook's not like an experienced horseman, but he was doing fine. I was talking to him, and then my horse just slipped from under me, and I ended up underneath him. And what was weird is the horse just stayed there, because they'll kind of be in shock because they don't really know what happened either. And my cook, Zach, goes, "Cliff, are you all right?" And I was still sitting under the horse, and I was like, "Well, Zach, right now, it's pretty marginal. We'll see." and then and then he got up, and that's when he kind of hurt me a little bit. But you have those things. If you're cautious, Jay, and you kind of and again, it kind of goes back to having a system. You're going to have them no matter what. But them resulting in real bad injuries to you or horses, you can avoid that by just kind of your system, how you're tying pack animals together, how you make sure guys pay attention to them. You try to catch things early. If a pack doesn't look right, you fix it, So those are all things you learn, because when it goes bad, it's bad. I've had to kill horses and stuff like that, and it's a horrible thing. It's horrible. And some, even if you're a big hunter, those horses and stuff, we use them every day, and they're kind of like employees, you know what I mean? And you have a relationship with them.
For sure, they're like family. Let's take a quick break here.
At GoHunt.com, we are restoring the heritage of the old and constantly redefining the new. We stay focused and put our efforts into redefining the future of Western hunting. What makes us special? What makes us different? We are the new breed of hunter. We are the customers that we serve. We are the innovators, and we are the future. Visit GoHunt.com/insider and join the movement.
Use the J. Scott promo code when signing up and receive a $50 KUIU gift card. Since 1982, the Outdoorsman's in Phoenix has made it their goal to provide the very best customer service combined with the latest and greatest optics and accessories in the business. Outdoorsman's is the leading designer and manufacturer of high-quality tripods and mounting accessories for any hunter's optical needs. Go to outdoorsmans.com or call 1-800-291-8065 and use the J. Scott promo code until February 28th to receive 10% off all Outdoorsman's packs and pack accessories. Okay, Cliff, I want to ask you about your elk and your mule deer hunting and have you walk through kind of your typical hunts and how things work from the time people book the hunts to showing up to, everything about it. So walk me through all that.
Okay. Yeah, and there's a little variation to, the service that they've chosen to do with us. And I'm about 50-50 right now. I do 50% drop camps and 50% guided. So the standard setup is the same. You come to the ranch, and the only way to get into any of our 12 camps is via horse and mule. And so you got to be open to riding, and that's kind of, to me, that's one of the cool parts about this type of trip is that you're going to go in somewhere pretty remote on you're going to ride a horse in, all your gear and all the camp is going to be packed in on pack stock. So you show up, and then if it's a drop camp, what we do is we get your gear all packed up, on the mules, and then we'll ride you in, and then the camps are all set up. And, they're in lots of different elevations, but most of them are roughly an hour and a half to all the way up to 3 hours. Some of my archery camps are actually up in that 4 or 5 hour horseback ride range, and they're pretty high elevation, the high 10s to around 11,000 feet. So in the drop camp situation, we pack you in, pack your food in, all that, and you kind of take care of yourself. And then we communicate via satellite phone with our camps. When you kill an elk, we'll come in and pack it out. We give you an overview of kind of, where we've packed the elk out, where the elk move around those camps and that sort of thing. And I have a lot of repeat business because a lot of the repeat business in that drop camp world kind of learns an area, and then they'll come back and hunt the same spots. And then, so our guided stuff, which is kind of what I really enjoy, and what I've kind of been trying to focus a lot of our improvements on is we pack you in the same way. I've got 3 different camps I guide out of. One's about 3 hour horseback ride. The others are about 2.5. So you pack in.
How many roughly miles is that, Cliff?
So when hours equate to essentially 3 miles per hour on horses.
Okay.
So you're looking at, most of them are 6+ miles. My furthest camp is about 16 miles. And I don't use it a whole lot because of the logistics around it, and it's really more of an archery type of area. So you're basically looking at 6 to 10 is where we do the majority of our hunting.
Okay.
And so on the guided stuff, you get packed in. We've got a cook in there. We've got wranglers take care of the horses and all that. The only difference with that, obviously, is that we have guides in the camp, and then we have a cook in there, and then we keep horses. So we have a little more capability to reach out and really find elk if they're not in the real close vicinity. With the horses. And it's all, a lot of that stuff's based on people's personal preference. Some people like to ride a lot, some people like to hike a lot. And we'll guide them either way. We'll take that into account. But in the end, particularly elk hunting it's just, you got to find elk or you're not really hunting for them is kind of the way I view it. So we focus on that, trying to get, where we know some elk are and do our thing from that point. That was, did I answer all those questions?
Yeah, absolutely. And your seasons, do any of your seasons fall when the elk are bugling?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question. So my archery business is growing, is probably the area where I'm growing the most. And that has to do, I think, Jay, with just the demographics of, I see it as I think it is a really cool trend, but you're getting a lot of more, a younger demographic, more active, kind of, they see it as more of an adventure, and archery kind of fits well for them. So I think that's why we're growing that part of it. What I'm seeing is, the last couple of years have kind of been weird for a lot of the guys in Colorado in terms of the rut. Like for instance, last year, we had a lot of bugling activity, and we're even calling in bulls during first rifle season, which is weird. You know what I mean? that's not typical for that area. You know, what everybody will tell you is that 21st to the 25th of September is probably your peak rut, really, right? But I've noticed we're still catching a little rutting activity in first season, which is nice, but it's weird. And I think the troubling part about it is, we have a gap between our archery season and first rifle, and I think a lot of the rutting activity is going on during that gap.
Do you think that's because of pressure? And maybe they don't get as much pressure, so they get to rutting?
Yeah, I've heard a lot of different theories on it, and I have my own kind of view on it. The old-time outfitters, I know a lot of old-time outfitters that are really kind of anti-archery because that's how they feel. They feel that the pressure, there's a lot of pressure during archery season on these elk, and it's kind of affected their breeding, and they're actually, that the conception is actually happening in early October, and now you got younger calves. So I think that's part of it. What I notice is that, and it plays into this. I don't know if it has actually changed the dates, but what I'll notice is I can be in those first couple weeks up there guiding or scouting on my own, and I'll see some rutting activity, like kind of what you'd expect, right? Like pre-rut kind of activity. Some little bulls are getting with cows in like the second week of September. And then you got this pressure comes in, and then everything shuts up. But if you get up at night, they're still rutting. You know what I mean? You're hearing the bugling and stuff. And I think it's just they just go more nocturnal. And I've heard a lot of guys that you've interviewed it sounds like a lot of people are kind of coming to that same conclusion. It just makes sense with the anecdotal evidence I'm seeing.
For sure. So you do these drop camps, and let's talk about archery first. So guys that want to archery elk hunt with the bow during the rut, and you take them up there, and you can either drop them off in outfitter tents and they kind of fend for themselves, and they do their own cooking and all that. You take in their food, or you can do the guided portion where they ride in and there's actually a cook and there's actually people to take care of the horses and what have you. Are your archers, chasing bulls that are bugling, or is it sporadic from year to year?
I would call it sporadic from year to year. If a guy, like in my drop camps, if guys go in and they have the intention that they're going to cover ground on foot until they get in to elk, then they're going to have a very good chance to kind of have that prototypical, archery hunt where they're going to be into elk bugling, and that's the norm. Now, the caveat to that, and I always tell this to guys, and this is just my view on it, Jay, particularly in archery season in these wilderness areas, the elk are real localized. Like they'll stay in, it's the one time when elk really kind of stay in like a little home range from my perspective, and they'll have just moved into it. Like I'll see elk in a totally different area in August, and then when you get into September, now they've moved into kind of some historical rutting areas. I'll kind of tell guys where I think those are, and those may not be right next to the camp. The way that we've structured it is we don't really want our camps in those areas because we don't want to mess them up. So if you're willing to put some miles on and really first find elk, in an area, you're going to have a good chance at that kind of activity. Now, the one thing that sometimes, guys lose time is that what I find is that you can find fresh elk sign in places, but if the elk haven't been there like that day, like if that elk poop isn't green and slimy and just came out of their butt, you need to keep looking because you can waste a lot of time in areas that the elk aren't, and then you're going to have very limited exposure to that rutting activity. It's not really high elk density anywhere in these wilderness areas in Colorado, so you can't, you got to find the spots first. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. And then moving on into the rifle seasons, you're saying that sometimes that first rifle season, guys can actually experience some decent bugling. How does your success rate as far as people bagging an animal compare, say, from archery into the first season, second season, third season, etc.? I mean, what kind of like success rates as far as actually harvesting an animal are you running?
Yeah, so I'll go through it. So the way I always put it is that archery, you're more likely consistently get into elk and see elk. However, my harvest rate is substantially lower during archery just because all the different things that need to align for you to get to kill a bull. So what I see is that first season is first rifle, second, third, and fourth. And I have the history of my permit for ever since it started about 30 years ago. On average, it runs between 45 and 50% harvest rate. But what you see is that first season has very little variability. You're gonna basically 40 to 45% of the guys are gonna harvest elk, and then above that, there's you get a couple of experience. That doesn't account for all the experience and chances guys are getting. And I can I have one big tip on that for guys that I'll get into later. But so your first season is pretty standard because you're kind of catching them. They've had that break between archery and first rifle, so it kind of has an opening day kind of pop, the first few days. So it's pretty much the same. And then year over year, your second and third season is way more dependent on weather. If you don't get weather, like we have in the last couple of years, you're going to probably have closer to like a 25-30% harvest rate if it's dry. Now, if you have the opposite, where you got deep snow, you've got elk concentrating, you've got them move into areas where they're more accessible, you may do way better than you did first season. So essentially, your first season is kind of like sticks to the average, and the others are highly volatile. Does that make sense?
For sure. And, do you have one season over the other that, I guess you just said it, your first season's usually pretty predictable, and then you can either do really good or really bad depending on weather on the other seasons.
Yeah, it's not. There's, you always have opportunities. It's just they're more variable. But like third season is going to swing between 20% harvest rate all the way up to 70 if we've got a tremendous amount of snow. You know what I mean? So you always have an opportunity. It's not, some areas where guys outfit, particularly, I know this about a few guys in Wyoming, if you don't have weather, it's going to be 0% success because they're in an area that the elk got to be pushed into. That's not what it is. Here, what it is that if it's not cold and you don't have snow, and particularly cold, to me, when I watch elk, if you don't have those frigid temperatures, they'll stay nocturnal. And that'll kill you in that second and third season. But if you got frigid temperatures, they've got to eat more because they're burning calories like crazy. And so that's when you start catching them. The elk are there. It's just when they're in timber, it's tough, and that's why you get that variability.
If you have someone that can shoot really well, they can lay down and shoot an elk at 400 or 500 yards. They're a good marksman. They're really good with their rifle, and they also can hike, and they've got a good attitude. Do most people that fit that category get a shot at a bull?
Yeah, I would say, 3/4 of the guys that fit that category or more are going to have an opportunity. The guys that are putting on, 5 to 8 miles a day, and then they can shoot and all that, and they take advantage of opportunities. They're going to have that chance to kill one. It's very likely. It's never guaranteed, but it's likely. And I think that kind of gets to the tip I was going to say. And I heard you had Craig Steele on, I believe, and he said something, and it resonates with me so much, and that's when we're talking elk hunting, guys got to get in the mindset that when you get an opportunity to kill a bull, you got to get it done, because elk are, like when I've guided, a lot of times we'll have a short opportunity to kill a bull. We'll be sitting out there for 150 yards away, and you've got 45 seconds, right, which is plenty of time to get down and kill it. But there's a lot of, if it's the guy's first experience during that hunt, there's a lot of kind of like iffy, he's trying to get a rest and all that. And then guys will say, well, you think he'll be back here tomorrow? And I say, well, I can almost 100% guarantee you he's not going to be in this spot tomorrow. And that's just the nature of that rifle elk hunting for us, Jay. And that's, you got to, when you get an opportunity and you want to, and that's a bull that you want to kill, you've got to do it then. You rarely get second chances on the same elk. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Let's take another quick break here to hear from our sponsors. Utah Hydrographics is in the water transfer printing service, and they are open to whatever you can dream up. Choose from a wide range of camo patterns, designs, and colors. Whether it's guns, bows, tools, rifle stocks, vehicles, steering wheels, fenders, dashboards, paint guns, fishing rods, cups, tripods, watches, knife grips, helmets for a local sports team or for your motorcycle, picture frames, mailbox, animal skulls, you name it, they can probably do it. Utah Hydrographics loves taking things that are general looking and turns them into something that looks fantastic and eye-popping. Give them a call and see what they can do for you and receive up to a 10% discount by using the JScott16 promo code. Visit them at utahhydrographics.com or on Instagram at Utah Hydrographics. Whether you are interested in elk, deer, antelope, bighorn sheep, or moose, Western Hunter and Elk Hunter magazines will bring the adventure to your mailbox. These publications feature articles on the finest hunting gear, tips and tactics from experienced hunters, field judging trophies, glassing techniques, calling strategies, and much more. To become a more knowledgeable and skilled hunter, subscribe today. Go to westernhunter.net/JScott and enter your email address for a chance to win a $1,500 credit towards any Swarovski product. All right, so Cliff, as these seasons go on, so do you typically put your camps like up on ridge lines where they can work their way out of the camps and walk without having to gain or drop a huge elevation, where they can get to glassing points and such? Or how do you have your camps positioned there? So
a lot of the camps are kind of established, like they're permitted, so I can't move them. But they were put in areas for certain reasons, and they all kind of vary. And I have a huge elevation grade in my camps. I've got them at 9.4 all the way up to 11.5. So my early season camps are pretty much on the geographic flat tops. So they're at that big plateau up there at 11,000 feet, and those camps are essentially set up just like you're saying. You're once you get the elevation behind you, that country up there is not that rough. So what you can do is there you've got a lot of opportunities to glass. And it's also, you got a lot of opportunities to cover ground and find the exact little finger drainages where these elk are rutting or where they're just hanging out after the rut in the case of the first season. So in those camps are like that. And then because of the weather issues we deal with in the snow, once I get out of first season, I can't use those camps, and I got to start more heavily using my camps that are down in the drainages. And some of those vary, some of them are pretty thick stuff, and probably the better ways to hunt them are focus on still hunting, and going through areas that I know are productive. And then, but other ones are on south facing stuff, and you can still do a lot of glassing, and I do a mix of it. When I'm guiding, my preference is to do a mix, and all my guides have a little bit different focus and, or approach to it. And then also we have to account for, the people that we're guiding, different physical levels, different, some of them don't want to ride as much, Some of them, you know, a lot of guys, in a pretty productive way to kill elk, I don't particularly use it a lot myself as a guide, but as the historical areas where they come out and feed or they're just moving, you know, sit guys that are patient on those spots, that's how a lot of elk can get killed in these type of areas. You know, it's just you get a patient guy who can sit and watch a spot for a couple of days, and he'll probably kill one if he's patient, you know.
For sure. Do you do bull elk hunts and cow hunts both?
Yeah, you know, and this gets into kind of, yeah, I do. The vast majority of what we're doing is bull hunts, and I've actually, and I've shared this with other people, and I have a couple of neighboring outfitters that are doing it. They're not packing out cows anymore. A lot of us kind of have an opinion that the female harvests, I don't want to say anything bad about the Fish and Game guys because they're very good. I have good relationships with them, and they have a tough job managing all these different units. But the female harvest of elk and then deer, you know, they have doe tags in these areas, which to me is absurd. It's kind of something that we all feel is maybe getting a little bit overdone. I mean, there's a lot of elk. These are huge elk herds. But a lot of guys have taken the stance to not pack out cows anymore. And I'm kind of leaning that way. You know, for archers and muzzleloader guys, because there's so many things you're trying to get aligned with your short range, I really don't. I don't have a problem with that at all. But I really, you know, I'd prefer guys just hunting bulls. And when I say that in the rifle seasons, we're not killing a bunch of huge bulls, you know, Jay. We pretty much kill bulls if they're legal.
What does it take to be legal?
It's got to have 4 points on one side or a 5-inch brow tine.
Okay, and then so you're killing legal bulls, but every year out of all your hunters, like what's kind of your best bull that you'll kill, and then you know, what's the biggest bull you've ever had up there?
So the wilderness is like it's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get, right? And so our typical bull is like a nice 5x5. We kill a bunch of raghorns. We'll kill a few, you know, 6x6s, and then, you know, every 15 bulls we'll kill like a 330 bull, right? Something like that. That's pretty typical. So 1 out of 10, 1 out of 15 is a 300-inch bull, but usually, you know, obviously on the lower end of the 300s. And then on the bigger end, in 2014 we packed out a bull that scored like 255, and he's kind of a weird-looking bull. I got a picture of him on the website. I've got a set of sheds that one of my guides found that I scored like 365, 370-ish. So they're there. It's just not the norm. You know, it's the thing that's great about it is you can always come hunt, right? The tag availability is there. You don't have to wait. You know, it puts you in the game, but it's for sure managed for opportunity. But the great thing about it on the deer and the elk is because it's a wilderness that's really, you know, the area we hunt is pretty hard to access on your own. You get some backpacking traffic, but not in the deep stuff. And so you got deer and elk that, even with the hunting pressure that exists in these, can survive and get old. So there's always a chance of killing a really big deer or a really big elk. It's just that they're not the norm.
Gotcha. Yeah, it makes total sense. So if someone gets their elk, does the guide then take care of the elk, and then they call a packer down at the main station and they come and get it, or do they hang it until the end and then everything's packed out all at the end?
So yeah, in our guided stuff, we take care of everything, quarter them up, pack them out, and do the whole thing. In our drop camps, I've instituted this satellite phone thing, and particularly archery season and first season, I like to get elk out as fast as I can. So I tell guys the minute that they get to one, you know, that if it's in bow season, the minute you've tracked it down, it's dead, even before you stick a knife in it. Give us a call so I can start to logistically figure out how I'm going to get in and get it. And it can be a challenge. Like one of the guys that packed for me, he went in and packed 2 bulls out, that were 13 miles in and packed them out in the same day. So, it takes a lot of time to do it, but you really want to get them out in September, and so we try to do that. And part of that is to keep the game meat good, but also part of it is that a big part of my business is logistics. And if guys got 2 bulls hanging in there that I didn't anticipate, when I go in to pack them out, it's a problem because I'm packing everything real heavy. So we try to get it done as quick as we can. In the rifle seasons, meat's not going to go bad in the second, third, and fourth rifle season. So, I'm not as worried about it, but we still try to take care of it just for logistics.
Gotcha. I want to ask you some questions about your deer hunting. I know I've gone on your Instagram and on your website, and you guys have been killing some pretty dang nice deer. What's going on with your deer hunts?
Yeah, so I'll just preemptively say that I love hunting mule deer, Jay. So that's there was very little deer hunting going on there from an outfitting perspective when I bought it. I love deer hunting. I love guiding deer hunters. It's the one time that I get to, it's the one time I get my spotting scope out and get to score animals and stuff like that. So I enjoy guiding and doing it. And I've really kind of figured them out. It's not, these units, all those units up there are not high deer density, but, if you have the patience and you do some scouting, and I enjoy doing that, you can find big deer. You're not going to find, a guy's not going to go out and see a bunch of big deer, but if he holds out, particularly that fourth season, usually I can get him a pretty good deer. And we've killed a couple really big ones, which is great. And they're there. A lot of it, if a guy, what I found too, and I see this trend going on. I know you're a big proponent of it, but if you can sit in glass, and really spend 4 or 5 hours a day doing that, you'll start seeing stuff that you never thought was there. You know what I mean? And so that's kind of the approach I take on it. And it's been fun. And, I spoke to you about it. I've got some opportunities for a season. I think, this year there might be a little volatility to it because all of our seasons are later, and that's going to be really a middle of the rut type of hunt. But, if you have 4 or 5 points, I've got a great hunt for guys like that because they can draw that tag. And it's the conditions are rough. It's cold and all that, but I guide from my family's ranch. It's a fun hunt. You're going to see deer, and the chances of finding a good one are pretty good. And go ahead. Go ahead. Oh, I was gonna say the other kind of unique opportunity that me and you talked about quite a bit was that they have an early high country hunt that's beginning in September. It's a really there's not a lot of hunts like that, so guys like to do it. It's high points. It's probably going to take 9 or 10 points this year to draw it, but you get to hunt those mule deer up in some beautiful areas. And again, you're not going to have high density of them, but it's a good opportunity to kill a big one.
And when you say big on that early season hunt, give me a range of what you're expecting.
Yeah, so to me, big and mule deer nowadays is like a 180 or bigger.
And so on that early season, they'll still be in the velvet. You have a chance to pattern them a little bit. You can glass them up and really kind of focus on a certain buck or two, and you think that the chances of killing a 180 plus buck are fairly decent?
Yeah, I think they're very good. And they're in the 70% plus bracket is kind of what I would say. You've got a good opportunity. And the way I've been organizing that hunt is that part of that is me doing quite a bit of scouting. The mule deer that time of year, like I said, they're not high density by any means, but you're hunting them way up in that 11,000 kind of elevation. And if you find them, I've found that they'll be pretty localized. And when you get into these second and third rifle seasons, where in a lot of units in Colorado it's very easy to draw a tag, it's really hard to find these big deer because they're not in that high open country. They've gone into the trees and they've pretty much gone nocturnal. So that's one of your opportunities. And then the only opportunity outside of that is when they're coming back down into the pockets of does and stuff during fourth season. The only thing about fourth season is it's a little bit more of a roll of the dice because I can't get the deer more locked down because they're moving, they're chasing does. It's just a little bit harder to pattern them during that time.
So the good news is on fourth season is that the new buck could show up any day. The bad news is he could show up and leave as quickly as he showed up because he's chasing does and he's traveling and rutting around, and you never know what might show up. It's a double-edged sword. You never know what might show up, but you never know. You find a buck and he's only there for 15 minutes and he's on the move again. Yeah,
exactly. Go ahead.
Which hunt do you think has the best high-end potential of bucks? I mean, you said the early season velvet hunt is a 180-plus buck hunt. What's your thoughts on the fourth season? Is it a 180-plus hunt? And then which one out of the two do you think has that chance for, 200 or over?
It's a tough question. I think on average, you're going to have higher success. You're going to see more of those bigger deer in the rut hunt, the fourth season hunt. But it's hard, because, I can only do it year to year. This year I could go up there early and scout around and I could lock down, a couple 200-inch typicals, and then I could tell a guy there's a pretty good chance we're going to be able to find them again because I know where they're at, and then in that case, that'd be I would say that's, you're going to have a really high potential success rate. But, on average, that rut hunt, you're just going to have a better, you get into more deer.
You're seeing more deer, yeah.
Yeah. And, the other thing about it is, that first hunt is a lot of guys have, and I think this is a reason that a lot of guys like to archery hunt elk and that's because you get into these beautiful areas. And so that first hunt kind of has that component too, but the other side of that is it's more physical. You got to be willing to be up there for 5 or 6 days at 11,000 feet. And, it's kind of the real deal. The fourth season is more, you got more of the elements, but you got a warm shower at night. You got to, you're sleeping in a bed and all that. So that's something to consider too,
For sure. Absolutely. It sounds great. And, you're able to, if guys want to know more about both of those hunts, either the velvet first season rifle hunts or the early season rifle hunts or those fourth season deer hunts, you'd be willing to talk to people if they've got more questions, correct?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm obsessed with, chasing big mule deer. So the only caveat to that is if you call me about it, I might talk your ear off for a couple hours, so make sure you got some time. But yeah, no, I mean, I like, they're fun. It's not like I don't dislike elk hunting. It's just, it's everybody's got their thing, and I like that for lots of reasons. So yeah, I love to talk to guys about it. And and I'll talk to guys about some other, other areas too. I do know 44 really well. I can't outfit it in it by any means, but I can chat with people about, that experience out there.
For sure. And the early season velvet, the mule deer hunt, how many tags total are there on that hunt, and how many tags would you be allowed to take?
Have you guys heard about PhoneScope? PhoneScope is a privately held company that makes custom-molded, precisely engineered smartphone digiscoping adapters. Photographing wildlife has never been easier. Take digiscoping photos and videos from your smartphone and share them with your friends. PhoneScope stands behind their product with a 100% money-back guarantee. PhoneScope is the future of digiscoping. Get yours now. Use the JScott16 promo code and receive 10% discount on all purchases. Check them out at PhoneScope, that's PhoneSkope.com, or on Instagram at PhoneScope. Wilderness Athlete is committed to improving the health and quality of life for the outdoor athlete by providing field-tested, scientifically validated nutrition and sports performance products. Check them out at wildernessathlete.com and use the JScott promo code to receive 10% off.
So there's that quota is running. It's 10 tags. Now most of them are going to residents. It varies a little bit depending if groups are applying or whatever, but essentially you've got 3 or 4 non-resident tags there. You're so at the maximum 4. And then in terms of what I can take, I can take all 4 of them. I have no limitations on what I can take. It depends. The way I prefer to do that is if it's 2 groups of a father and son, then I'd be willing to do 4. But the reality of it, if it's individuals, I prefer just to do 2 because I've got a lot of scouting involved in that. And again, I don't want to be, I want to make sure I've got deer for everybody to look at. So I like to stick around 2.
Yeah, gotcha. And then on the 4th season, the same question.
Yeah, so the 4th season tag, there's 50. The quota's 50, and it's single unit based. And when guys look at these units in Colorado, there's a little confusion because you've got some hunts that are combined, like the elk hunts are a bunch of units together and that sort of thing. So in this case, you have 50, and it doesn't mean that can change. Jay, they never tell us, but it's pretty set in stone. I don't think there's going to be huge variability around that. So you've essentially got 10 to 15 resident tags, and I'm probably not quoting it, or non-resident. I might not be saying it perfectly, but it's pretty close.
The gist of it, yeah.
Yeah.
And those 4th season tags, this season dates for the 4th season are about as late as they possibly get, are they not?
Yeah, and we talked about that a bit. It's going to be really an interesting season. I look forward to it because of the late dates. Really, typically our dates are really kind of in the first. It's like they're not really like deep in the rut, but this year they're gonna be, and that's gonna be interesting across Colorado. And I urge anybody, for us, I'm obviously biased, but I think it's going to benefit us given the geography and the fact that I have this big swoop across elevation. I think that's going to be good for us because all I'm going to do is I'm going to end up with more deer, and then it's going to be easier to hunt them because we're in the rut. But I urge anybody who's looking at Colorado hunts to consider that these deer might be in totally different areas than they typically are during 4th season. I think some units you might have these deer might be lower on private than people are used to. So that's something to consider when you're choosing units. Is overall, I think it's going to be a really good thing for the hunting because you're going to be deeper in the rut, but it could affect different areas differently. Does that make sense?
For sure. Yeah, meaning the dates are even later, so they're even further down onto private, and private usually takes in some of the lower, the winter range country. And yes, the dates may be great, and yes, you may be seeing deer rut, but they could be a half mile over the fence because they've gone ahead and dropped all the way down into the winter range.
Yeah, exactly. You're exactly right. I mean, a large portion of the winter range is on private. And, the other thing is these deer, I've watched them, and I've got some good buddies who are biologists, and one in particular is a mule deer focused biologist. And the deer, they really move. They don't, unless you get high accumulations of snow where they got feed problems, where they can't get to their feed, they move kind of on the same dates every year. And so part of it's this rut, but part of it's just their natural migration. And if they're a week ahead of that, it could put them in a totally different area. So yeah, it's exactly what you're saying, but it also just has to do with the fact that their migration is photo period based, and they're going to move and they're going to be in a little bit different spot.
Yeah, it makes total sense. Tell me a little bit about your summer pack trips as well. Is it obviously for sightseeing and fishing? And then also, do you do hourly and day rides too, or is it just pack trips?
Yeah, so I focus on more of the expedition / adventure like pack trips. With my operation, it just kind of makes more sense. So most of my summer stuff is multi-day. I will do full day fishing trips. I'm gonna for sure get you out on one, Jay, because I know that you'd probably enjoy it. You're a big fly fisherman, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so
I love it.
I'll get you out. It's there's lots of different ways we can do it, but in terms of where the interest comes from is part of it is fishermen that wanna fish that high alpine stuff. We have lakes, and then we have a bunch of good native cutthroat and then brook trout fishing down lower in these alpine streams. So that's part of it, and those guys will do a 2 or 3 day pack trip that's kind of fishing focused. We can hit several different lakes, different types of fishing. And then the other part of that business is just families or corporate groups that just want an adventure, and they may do some fishing, while we do the trip. But really, the focus is pretty much just a really remote, well-equipped camping trip, and it's fun. I mean, for a family, it's fun. That kind of camping, it's different. We have wall tents, they have wood stoves in them. We're cooking on propane and all that stuff. So you can have it's kind of, it's a cushy camping trip, but it still has a big adventure aspect because you're 15 miles from a road, and it's beautiful country. So,
yeah, I mean, for a lot of people, it'll be the biggest adventure they ever do in their life. And just riding in and looking at the scenery alone is sometimes the biggest adventure that some people, will talk about the rest of their lives. Just not even getting off the horse, they've already been on the biggest adventure they've ever been on. And I think that's fantastic. But what I hear you saying is you can kind of customize per what somebody needs or what somebody wants. You can customize per group and kind of make it fit for exactly what they're looking for.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. My summer stuff is basically customized trips. And then where my hunting stuff has got, we're more of like a certain service base. I will do some customization on some things on that too, but my summer stuff is pretty much people call, they kind of tell me what they want to do, and then I kind of mold a service around it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's been awesome having you on, and I feel like you and I could probably talk on a lot of subjects, and look forward to having you on again to talk maybe more specifically about some of these different things we touched on today. I will tell you, I love your websites. Your wife has a Instagram page that I just love. It's Healthy, Hungry, and Happy. And she does a phenomenal job on that. And your social media and your websites and such are awesome with great photos, and it's very evident that you run a great business. So I want to commend you on that, and I want to give you a chance to tell people how they can get a hold of you to find out more about the trophy mule deer hunting and the pack-in drop camps and the elk hunting and the summer pack trips.
Yeah, for sure. And I really appreciate you having me on, Jay. A lot of what I do, I respect a lot of these guys who are doing a lot of the social media because it takes a lot of work to get that good content. So I really appreciate your feedback on that, and also appreciate the fact that you also do a bunch of it, and I enjoy that. The best way to get a hold of me is just through the website. The domain name is ftguides.com, and that'll actually take you to flattopswildernessguides.com. It's just easier to go ftguides.com. My Instagram is Cliff, CLIFFGRY, and all I'll say on that is you mentioned my wife, and if you can do anything, get these guys to follow me on Instagram because I want to get more followers than my wife. She's got like 30.
Good luck,
30,
buddy.
I got you. It's probably never going to happen, but anyways, I can attempt. And then I'm on Facebook and all that stuff too, but the links are through the website, and guys can either shoot me an email on that, or call me on the numbers on the website, but they can also just email me at cliff@ftguides.com. And, I'm traveling a little bit now, but I love to chat with people about all the different opportunities we provide. So I welcome the conversation.
Sounds good. And I don't have the Colorado regs in front of me, but the deer and elk applications are due, coming up in April here? April 3rd, maybe?
I believe it's April 5th this year. It's always that first week of April. Okay. And I always tell people just don't wait till April 5th because the website might not work. So get it done before that. But yeah, it's the first couple of days of April.
Awesome. Well, sounds good. Well, I really appreciate having you on, and you enjoy your family time out in California. And when I'm going to be getting up to Colorado at the end of May, and I'll be there all summer, so I'll definitely look you up. And appreciate all the info on the trophy mule deer hunting and the elk and all the different things. And you guys travel safe when you head back to Colorado, and God bless you, and thanks for spending time with us.
All right. Thanks a lot, Jay. I appreciate it.